We're so grateful for your interest tonight and taking some time to get some updates about the upcoming year. Father Lee, our pastor, also sends his regards. He would have been with us on the call as well, but tonight is confessions in the parish. So he's over hearing confessions this evening, but he does send his regards and best wishes. So let's begin as we always do with the prayer, asking God to bless us and our time together. And the prayer that I'm going to use is a prayer to the Holy Spirit. And this is the prayer that we have been praying before all of our task force meetings and before all of our deliberations. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and kindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and you will renew the face of the earth. Lord, by the light of the Holy Spirit, you have taught the hearts of your faithful. In the same Spirit, help us to relish what is right, and always rejoice in your consolation. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So as we begin, I do want to extend a warm welcome to all of our new families. We have new families on the call tonight as well, and also a welcome back to returning families. This is the largest, aside from graduation that we had in June, this is the largest school event we've had since March. So it's just exciting to have all of you participating. As we begin, I want to take a moment to thank the members of our task force who have been working so diligently over the last few months. I shared a list of names of the members back in the spring, but I do want to take a moment now to just acknowledge them so that you can be aware of the people behind the scenes that are working so hard to support our school. So on the task force, we have our assistant principal, Mrs. Stephanie Horgan, our kindergarten teacher, Ms. Stevie Morga, middle school math teacher, Mrs. Vicki Bill, resource teacher, Mrs. Samantha Pryor, technology coordinator, Mrs. Tina Pettigen, our school nurse, Mrs. Patrice Snowden, and our director of marketing and development, Mrs. Janice DeVore. And many of them are on the call with us tonight. I also want to thank our faculty and staff. Some of them are on the call as well. They've also been working behind the scenes to assist with planning. We now have 5 subcommittees that are working on a lot of the logistics and the details, and they've taken a very active role in that. And so, as always, a very dedicated group of professionals. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide you some updates. I know that in the recent communications I've shared with you, we've given you sort of the big picture. And you've had questions about logistics and procedures and routines, and tonight we're going to be able to address many of those for you. So following the presentation, we'll have additional questions and answers. As Mrs. DeVore said, you can drop those into the chat box and she'll reply throughout the evening, and then also put some to the side for me to address at the end. I would estimate that my presentation will run about 45 to 60 minutes. It is a compilation of all of your questions. As of shortly after noon today, we had 70 questions, and so Mrs. DeVore organized all of them, sent them to me, and then this afternoon I put them together in a presentation. Because this is happening just today, there's no slides to go along with it. It's just going to be me speaking to you. But don't feel compelled to have to, write down all the notes and the information, because we will be sharing highlights tomorrow. I'll be sending out a written piece for those families who are not able to participate tonight. So starting with calendar, scheduling, and orientation. The Office of Catholic Schools has announced just a couple of weeks ago that the schools have some latitude with the start date. And the purpose of that is they want to ensure that schools are confident in opening up safely, and that we can ensure everybody's wellness when we start. We feel like we're well positioned there. We have a lot of the materials that we've ordered have been coming into the building. We're continuing to prep the building, so I think we're right on track there. However, the task force has recommended, and I've supported and have decided that we will delay the opening of the school year by just a few days. So rather than opening on Wednesday, August 26th, our first day of school will be Monday, August 31st. Now, the reason for that is twofold. There's the preparation piece I just talked about, but we really want to focus on giving our students, our parents, our faculty and staff more time to transition back into the year. And I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean in just a minute on that. So the first day of school will be August 31st. That's going to be for grades K, 1, and 2, and the students in the blue cohort, those that are going to attend Monday and Wednesday. And that first day will be a noon dismissal. The second day of school will be Tuesday, September 1st. Again, that'll be students in grades K, 1, and 2, and students in the white cohort. And again, that will be a noon dismissal. So the first 2 days of school will be noon dismissals. And our kindergarten will dismiss at noon the first 4 days. So that's Monday through Thursday of their first week. Wednesday will be the first full day of school for students in grades 1 through 8. Our kindergarten orientation will take place. It's going to be on Thursday, August 20th at 7 in the evening, but that is going to be a virtual event. So rather than having parents and students come in, that will be an online event with more details to follow. As you might imagine, things have continued to develop rapidly, and there have been changes with the beginning of the year calendar. So I know there's an interest in seeing information about the rest of the year. So within the next week, I'll be sending to you again a copy of our calendar that will include the holidays and the half days. It will not include all of the special activities and events. We're going to have to take those on a month-by-month basis, determining which ones are feasible. But I'll certainly get to you the academic calendar, again, the half days and the holidays. A great tradition at All Saints is Orientation Day. And this year we're going to be doing that differently because of the need for social distancing and limiting the number of people in the building at one time. So what we're going to do is on August 26th, which was going to be our original first day, and August 27th, those 2 days we're going to call our Welcome Home event. And that's going to take the place of orientation. And what this will provide is for every family, you will be able to sign up for a time to come into the building. So we'll be having only a family or two every 30 minutes assigned to a classroom. And it'll be an opportunity for a parent and a student to come into the building, to meet the teacher, to see the classroom, to see the layout of the furniture, to drop off some of your supplies. We'll let you know in advance which supplies to bring in and which to keep at home for now, and just to have that opportunity to meet and greet the teacher. Again, that's going to be staggered, so we're going to have limited numbers of people coming into the building. We'll ask everyone to wear masks those days. We'll do temperature checks before they come in as well to ensure everyone's health and safety. In regards to the cohort assignments, I know that this is something that's very much on your minds because it's important for your planning, and we're trying to expedite this as quickly as we can. We did receive the final enrollment commitment forms end of last week. We have a few families we're still in conversation with, but we've got most of those forms back so we can really complete our planning process now. There's a very high demand for Tuesdays and Thursdays. When we put the opportunity out there for people to indicate their preference, I knew that it wouldn't be right down the middle, but we didn't know which way it would tip and how far it would tip. So in 3 grade levels, Tuesday and Thursday, there's a very high demand. So we're going to be sending out a follow-up communication to families to ask them essentially the level of priority. If it's a simple preference and convenience, we're going to want to know that. If this is a really significant issue, then we want to know that as well. We want to try to prioritize and do the best we can to meet the needs of as many families as possible. In addition to that, we have a number of special considerations in putting the cohorts together. We certainly want to keep siblings together. It's going to make sense for families, all the children to attend the same days. There are some families that have requested that not be the case for particular reasons, and we're going to honor that for them as well. But the default is that siblings will be placed in the same cohort, either blue or white. We're also taking into consideration a grouping in the math program in the middle school. As you know, we have an advanced math track, so we're going to need to place all of those students in the same cohort so that they're not mixed among different groups of students. We're also taking into consideration the potential for the band program this year. You may have seen the survey that we sent out today. It's not confirmed whether or not we will have band. I've been in touch with Mr. Ward the last few weeks. He's the co-owner of the Garwood Whaley Band Program for the Diocese of Arlington, and he is determining the feasibility of offering the band program. Obviously, there's lots of things to consider related to social distancing, students playing instruments in close proximity to each other. So where we stand on that is he's working on details of a proposal, and then we'll make the determination as to whether or not we can offer band. In the hopes that we can, and to set that program up for success, we do want to place those students who are interested in band in the white cohort, that Tuesday, Thursday grouping. So that's the purpose of the survey today. We're also giving particular consideration to faculty and staff. We have a number of faculty and staff who have expressed concern about not having supervision of their children on the days that they're not assigned instruction. And so in an effort to help them out, to acknowledge their dedication to our school as well, and to maintain teacher retention, children of faculty and staff have been given the option of attending Monday through Thursday. That, of course, is standard for grades K through 2, but that's a special privilege we're giving to faculty and staff children in grades 3 through 8. So we're going to go through all of these details and get those cohorts confirmed by early next week in the hopes of sending that out to you by the middle of next week. Now, just a few words about the model that we're rolling out, the hybrid and the virtual learning. As I shared when we first publicized this is sort of our baseline. This is our starting point for the year. This is what we're committing to as we start the year. That doesn't mean that it won't change. We're going to have to monitor circumstances throughout the school year. Obviously, we're going to look at health data, and we'll get information from the state and local health officials. And that could move us in one of two directions. It's possible during the year that we would not have to be as restrictive with some of the measures that we put in place. It's possible that we might have to be more restrictive. What that means is it's potential that we could have more students coming for in-person instruction, but it could also go the other way. We could have more online learning, even 100% online learning. The way those transitions might happen is I would think that the change to online learning for everybody would be the result probably of a state or local decision, and that would happen very quickly based upon health data. The decision to increase in-person instruction would be more gradual, and we would have an opportunity to kind of ramp up and prepare for that transition. So again, that's what we're going to monitor over the course of the year. We recognize the need to be agile and to be able to adapt to our circumstances. One of the things that we're very pleased with our program is the flexibility. So we have families who have signed up for the virtual learning program. Please know that as circumstances change, families can move back and forth between those two models. We're not asking families to commit to the whole year of virtual learning. And the reason is we recognize in our community, we do have families that are going to face distinct circumstances. So for example, a family who has a grandparent come and visit for a couple of weeks in the middle of the year, and their children have been attending in person. At that moment, they might feel it's more prudent to have their children attend online learning only. All you would have to do is just let us know of that change. So we can make those changes very easily and very quickly for you. Had a number of questions come in about drop-off procedures and pick-up in the afternoon. So we have a committee that's been working on this with the task force. For morning arrival, we will continue to have 2 drop-off areas. There will be a drop-off in the rear parking lot and one in the front parking lot, very similar to what you're already accustomed to. We are exploring the possibility of having an extended time for arrival. Right now, we have arrival set up for 20 minutes. We're looking at expanding that to 30 minutes, just to give us a little bit more time to go through the health screenings every morning. What that health screening will look like is this. Mrs. Snowden, our school nurse, will be providing a questionnaire to you, and that's something that we're going to ask you to keep at home. We're not going to ask you to fill out a paper questionnaire and turn it in every morning, but rather we're going to provide it to you as a point of reference. We're going to ask that you keep it handy, that you be keenly aware of what those symptoms are, and if you have any concerns, that you not send your child to school if they have those symptoms, and of course that you're in touch with Mrs. Snowden. However, when the students arrive at All Saints, we will be conducting temperature checks. And so the way that's going to work is as you go through the carpool line, This year, there will not be any safety patrols. It will just be faculty and staff. And at the very front of the line, we're going to identify 2 zones. The first car is going to be zone 1. The second car is going to be zone 2, and that'll be coned off. When the staff member is ready, the door will open, your child will get out of the car, and they will check their temperature right then using an infrared thermometer. If they do not have a temperature, then they're going to be invited into the building and go in by way of the new breezeway. If there is a temperature, we're going to have them get back in the vehicle then, and then they'll exit with their parent. Students who are going to walk to school or ride their bicycle, they will enter the building by way of the old breezeway behind the school. So they'll walk around the building and then meet one of our staff members by the old breezeway down by the clinic. The purpose of that is we can screen them. If by chance they do have a temperature, then we would invite them into the clinic, and that's where they would remain with Mrs. Snowden until they're picked up without having to pass through the school. For morning arrival, we will be using a single point entry process. So other than the walkers and bikers, all other students will enter by way of the new breezeway. As they come in, we're going to try to prop doors open, particularly classroom doors, to cut down on touch points and them having to touch the handles of the doors. Students who are arriving late, their parents will still be asked to come into the building to sign them in. The primary purpose of that is we want to make sure that each student arrives safely in the building. So we do ask a parent to escort them in and sign them in. Anyone coming in for that purpose will need to wear a mask. We will have a screen at the front desk. We will be practicing and encouraging social distancing, and then we'll have protocols too in terms of pens to use and just maintaining sanitized conditions. For the afternoon dismissal, we will again have 2 pickup areas. One will be in the front parking lot and one will be in the rear parking lot. The difference this year is that we will have no assembled gatherings. So parents, when you arrive, you'll simply remain in your vehicle. We're going to have a smaller number of cars because we have the school divided between 2 cohorts. We also have a considerable number of families who have opted for virtual learning. So it'll be a smaller carpool process. Parents will park in a designated area, and then when called, we'll roll their car forward to a pickup area. We'll be calling students out individually, and there'll be staff to guide them out to that area. So details to follow on that. We're still working on the exact pickup area and how we're going to use technology to make that as efficient as possible for us. We've gotten some questions about school supplies and Chromebooks as well. The question has come up, should you purchase all the school supplies? The answer that I've been giving to parents at this point is yes. I think it's a good idea to purchase them because you don't know whether you're going to be in person or virtual at different points in the year. That way you'll have everything that you need, regardless of the model of learning. The items that you would not need to purchase at this time are locker shelves and locks, particularly in the middle school, because we're not going to be using hallway lockers. Students in grades 4 and 5 will have access to their locker, so they could still use their shelves, but in the middle school, we will not be using those. Again, we'll be providing guidance to you in advance of our Welcome Home event to let you know which supplies to bring in and which supplies to leave at home. We're pleased to share with you again that we're going to provide Chromebooks for all of our students, grades 3 through 8. And those are devices that students will use at home as well as at school. So we are actually getting carrying cases and covers for all of them so that students can easily bring them back and forth between home and school. The only students and families that are asked to pay a fee for that service are in the middle school. So we've had a one-to-one device program for a number of years in the middle school. So there is a fee structure for that. It's a lease-to-own model. After the 8th grade year, parents can retain those devices. For grades 3, 4, and 5, there is no Chromebook fee. We have a sufficient number of devices in stock for us to repurpose them and make them available to your families. In the classroom, students will keep their belongings in their own personal space, their desk, and their cubby, or their locker. Students in the primary grades may use their seat sacks to store items as well. And at the end of each day, we'll be sanitizing each of the rooms, each of the desks, each of the chairs, and all of the high contact surfaces. In the middle school, we've made a decision to implement block scheduling. Block scheduling will allow for 90-minute classes every other day. So instead of having the 6 core subjects each day, they'll have 3 each day. That is going to reduce the number of books and materials that students in the middle school would be asked to bring back and forth between home and school. That's going to enable them to travel a lot more lightly. It's going to reduce the number of transitions of faculty moving from room to room. It's going to allow our students to go deeper in their learning because it'll be a 90-minute block. Will allow the teacher to engage our virtual learners that much more effectively because of the additional time. And we also believe it's going to reduce that sense of urgency. It's going to allow us to slow things down and manage the tempo for our students. So again, pleased to announce block scheduling in the middle school. A number of questions have come up as to whether our students will be able to attend Mass and prayer services, and that's a high priority for us. We are still working through what that's going to look like. Right now, we know that our students in the past have attended the parish Mass. It's not going to be feasible for the whole school to be there now because there's limits on capacity in the church. So what we have to first do is look at the size of our cohorts. We have to look at the size of daily attendance at the parish Mass and determine whether it's possible to have an entire cohort there or whether we'll have to limit it to 1 or 2 grade levels at a time. In either case, the students attending Mass is a priority for us and for Father Lee. And so know that we're going to be working on that behind the scenes. A question has also come up as to whether the parish priest will continue to visit the classrooms. That's not yet been decided. A lot of that is determined by the priest schedules each year, but we remain hopeful that they're going to have regular interaction with our students. Some questions came up about the academic plan in grades K, 1, and 2 and what that's actually going to look like. So I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview on that. So each class of grades K, 1, and 2 will be divided into 2 parts. So if you picture a first grade class of, let's say, 24 students, we'd have 12 students in one room, 12 in the other, assuming they're all here for in-person, they're not participating in virtual learning. The teacher would be in one room and the instructional assistant would be in the other room. Now the teacher retains responsibility for all of the instructional planning, the delivery of content, the curriculum, and also student assessment. The instructional assistant continues in a role of support. And now it's going to be an enhanced role. They're going to have more responsibility, but it's still a supportive role. So there's no change in terms of expectations regarding teacher licensing. Those instructional assistants will also participate in professional development so that they're getting similar training as to what we offer our teachers so that they can be that much more effective in supporting our learners. Throughout the day, the teacher and the assistant will go back and forth between the rooms. So the rooms will be co-located. They'll be in proximity to each other. And we're going to try to ensure a sense of equity between the 2 rooms. So for example, if a first grade teacher starts in one classroom on Monday, the next day she would start the day in the opposite room. So there's going to be this back and forth between the 2 rooms and between those 2 staff members. We're also going to use technology, Zoom video conferencing for the teacher to be able to present to both classes at the same time. A big part of our rollout in this new year is going to be the focus on social emotional learning. This is going to be a critical area of focus for us. We're going to need to be very intentional about starting our year very gently, recognizing that our students, our parents, our faculty and staff have been through a tremendous amount, a lot of stress, and for some, trauma as well. And so the way that we set our students up for success is going to look very different this year. So their first few days, we're really going to focus on helping them to feel safe, helping them to feel secure, helping them to feel supported, helping them to feel encouraged, helping them to understand how to keep themselves safe at All Saints, how to look out for themselves and others. It's going to be about building relationships between our students, building relationships between our students and their teachers. And once we have that foundation in place, then we can step back and say, okay, everybody is feeling a sense of belonging, a sense of shared responsibility. Now we can begin to look at the academics. We can begin to do some testing and assessing to find out if there's some learning gaps that we need to focus on. Part of that interaction, social skills building, will take place outside at recess. Students will enjoy recess. They'll also have PE outside, so that's going to be a wonderful opportunity for them. The activities are going to look different, right? So we know that with the emphasis on social distancing, some of the things that children love, like tag, are going to be different. So you might hear them come home and say, you know, we're playing shadow tag at All Saints. So there's going to be some innovative ways that we repurpose some games that are familiar to the children. One of the more complex questions for us has been the special subject areas. One of our concerns is that the special subject teachers, they teach all of the students in the school. And so that would be 18 different classes. So one of our goals was try to reduce their potential exposure to that many different clusters of students. And so we have a multi-tiered approach for our special subjects. In PE will be twice a week for our students again this year. And as you know, we've asked students to wear their PE uniforms on PE day. And PE will be held outside to the extent possible. The children are going to benefit from fresh air and being outside. There's plenty of space for them to social distance. Our library is a high contact area. If you think about just the process of the library with books and things that children are checking out. So we put together a specific plan for the library. Most of the interactions in the library are going to be virtual, with Mrs. Coyle teaching lessons virtually to the classrooms. And she has put together a process for students to check out a limited number of books and also to have limited access to the library. Art, music, and Spanish are other special subjects. They will be providing instruction through a combination of in-person and virtual instruction. So each of our students will have an assigned lesson time, but not all the special subject teachers will teach every class, every grade level in person. So for example, for the point of it, just illustration, let's say Ms. McPhilby, our music teacher, is assigned kindergarten and third grade. What that means is she would teach kindergarten and third grade in person every week. All the other grades she would teach live via Zoom from the music room. What that does is it reduces her exposure to 2 grade levels. The other part of this is that she, in being assigned to those 2 grade levels, will be the person to provide breaks and support to the classroom teachers. Right now, the homeroom teachers are going to have a challenging schedule. They're going to have reduced planning times because of this. They'll be with their students when they eat lunch in the classroom. They'll be with them when they're outside for recess as well. So we're looking at ways to creatively provide them breaks and relief. And so that's going to be part of the special subject schedule. Some of the activities that the special subject teachers are going to offer will be different. So for example, a question came up, will there be singing in music class? Unfortunately, at this point, there will not. As you've probably heard, there's been a lot of research done on how the virus can be transmitted through singing. So there won't be any singing. That will be a limitation for us. In art, you know, there won't be shared materials. So the teachers are going to have to really think creatively and outside of the box, but they're a great group. And I know they've been working on this already during the summer. Related to that, it remains to be seen whether we'll have after-school activities. We know that Scola is canceled because we can't have singing at this point. So there'll be no choir for our Mass. Band, as I shared with you already, is to be determined. The question of the other special activities relates to the extent to which we want to, or we can, mix students between groups. And then also, what's the nature of the activity? So as we open up the school year, there's not going to be any after-school activities as we begin, and that will be reevaluated as we go forward. We've had some questions about uniforms as well. As you know, we are asking students to wear their regular uniform on days when they're in person and also when they're learning virtually. And I'm sure when you told your children that, I'm sure that was not the highlight of their day. They probably thought they're going to be able to be very comfortable learning at home. But there's a lot of thought behind this. It relates to best practice. And part of it is when the students put on their uniform, it sets the tone. They know that they're getting ready for that part of the day, which is allocated for learning. It also creates a sense of class cohesion and a sense of class community. One of our goals is that we want the students who are in the classroom and the students who are learning at home to have almost the exact same experience. And so if they're all in their uniforms, that's going to help us to accomplish that goal. Question came up about relaxing The requirement for vests and ties during the winter months, because many parents don't wash those with the same frequency. So that's a great question. We haven't thought about that yet. So that's something we'll take up with the task force, and we'll make a decision on that before we get to the winter months. The uniform closet sale, we do have coordinators for the uniform closet. We're working on a process for contactless ordering and handing off of those uniforms. So details to come in the next week or so. Related to lunch and recess, we did send out a survey. We invited you to give us your input on whether or not you'd be interested in buying lunch this year. As of this afternoon, we have 163 respondents, so thank you to those that have already participated. If lunch is provided, it will be prepared in-house in the kitchen by our staff. It would be pre-packaged and delivered to the classrooms. Again, the students will be eating lunch in their classrooms each day, and Mrs. Snowden, our nurse, will be providing guidance as to which classrooms will be designated nut-free because of allergies. Students are permitted to bring not only a lunch from home, but also a snack as well. They can continue to enjoy a snack during the day. It will be important for our students to enjoy recess outside. We have not finalized that schedule yet. We have to put together our instructional schedule first and work backwards from there. We also have to work within the state limitation of no more than 50 students at a time outside in a given space. So we are exploring the potential of using not just the back parking lot, also the courtyard, and potentially the driveway on the side of the school, so that we could have multiple groups outside at one time. We're going to need to limit the use of equipment outside. So some of the things that students have used that are high contact, we're not going to be able to do that as we have in the past. We're also not going to have the playground equipment, the actual structure, open at the beginning of the year. We do anticipate that we will open that at some point. The sanitation requirements are no greater than regular cleaning, but there are touch surfaces out there. So if you have one group out there, before the next group comes out, we'd have to do some sort of prepping of that equipment. So for now, the playground equipment will remain closed until further notice. I'd like to talk a little bit now about the at-home learning experience for you. Again, I want to thank the task force for their research on different ways that we can make this happen. We looked at 3 different solutions for live streaming classes. Looked at several products, and we've decided that we're going to use a laptop. So using CARES Act funding, we're purchasing additional laptops that will be placed in the classroom. They'll be on a Lazy Susan device. And the camera will be on in the direction of the front of the room where the teacher is going to be instructing. In front of the active panel, we'll have a blue square on the floor. That represents an area that the teacher can stand, knowing that they're 6 feet away from anybody else in the room. And it's also an area that means that they will be on camera. They can offer instruction. Our instruction is going to be very different in virtual learning than it was in the spring. In the spring, most of the learning was asynchronous. So there was 1 or 2 times a week when the teacher would send out an invite and the students would be on Zoom. The rest of the time they worked independently. This virtual learning is going to be the opposite of that. We want the learning experience for the virtual learners to mirror exactly what's happening in the classroom. So when the day starts, they're going to see all the interaction between the teacher and the students. We want them to have a very comparable experience. So the question has come up, what's that schedule going to look like for virtual learners, and how much screen time will they have? A good way to look at that is to look at what is the interaction in the classroom like? How often is the student looking at the teacher? Well, the teacher chunks the lesson and presents something for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then says, okay, everybody get to work. I want to see you work on this. I want you to write this paragraph. I want to see you do these problems. And then 20, 30 minutes later, they go over that, or she checks that work. So there's going to be that flow for our virtual learners as well. So students will need access to a computer. They'll be logged into Zoom, but they won't be actively engaged with it all day. They've got to keep an ear on it, because at some point the teacher's going to say, okay, it's time for recess. Virtual learners, everybody go outside, play 20 minutes, but I need you back in 20 minutes because we're starting our next lesson, right? So the students who are virtually learning will follow the cues of the teacher in real time. Students who are unable to attend school for any reason can participate in virtual learning that day. So if you have a change in schedule, if you have a health-related concern, something related to logistics, then you're welcome to have your son or daughter participate virtually that day. Now, with that said, it has to be for a legitimate reason. So, we don't want to have a scenario where, the students are saying to their parents in the morning, you know what, I think I'm going to go virtual today. I think I'll just stay home and learn. We want it to be predictable. We want the students to have a sense of responsibility and commitment to what they've signed up for. But know as parents that you can choose based upon the circumstances that you're facing. If a child is absent from virtual learning due to illness or appointments, as always, communication with the teacher will be key. We will be recording the sessions, but it won't be practical for a student to go back and watch the whole day. So the teacher can take the lead in condensing the work that the child missed and providing that to him or her. Our e-learning Fridays, those will be asynchronous days. That's when the students will be working independently. And I have to share a little bit of the backstory on this, because when I put the survey out to you originally, I shared a couple of different scheduling models, and all of them had the 2 days one week and the 3 days the next. And then all of a sudden there was a change in direction. And so what happened is, after that survey went out, task force continued to meet, I began to become concerned about our ability to sustain the schedule that we were looking at. Because right now, teachers in grades K, 1, and 2, Monday through Thursday, have no assistant. That's not something we could sustain indefinitely. So the faculty and staff is hardworking. We could get through a month, but I want to look at a model that we can sustain indefinitely. And so that's when I decided to step back from the 2 days, 1 week, 3 days the next, and reserve Friday to be a day when teachers can have that high quality planning time, when they can collaborate, when they can participate in professional development, when we can have administrative meetings. It's a day for them to recharge, to plan, to renew, because the commitment is to quality. What we're doing, we want to be able to do well, and we want to be able to do it long term. So that's where that change came from. So on Fridays, when the teachers are engaged in those types of activities, the students will be participating in independent work. Now, some of that work might be online. The teachers might say, I want you to go on to your Google Docs or online assignment and complete these tasks, but some of it's also going to be pencil and paper as well. It will be asynchronous, so they're going to be working at their own pace throughout the day. It's not going to be with their classmates or with a teacher. There will be no expectation of online learning that day with their teacher. All right, I'd like to spend a little time now talking about some of our COVID protocols in response to your questions. Something that came up was a question of, will there be daily cleaning? What will that look like? So we're going to have 2 levels of daily cleaning. There will be tasks that will be completed ongoing throughout the day. So for example, after our students enter the building in the morning, the first cleaning task will be all the touch points on the entry doors, the handrails going up to the middle school, anything that the students might have touched when they come in. And then throughout the day, a member of our facility staff will be tasked with moving about the building, cleaning the restrooms, cleaning the high contact surfaces. After school closes each day, that's when we'll have the cleaning of the actual classrooms. Each chair, each desk will be sanitized thoroughly each day, along with the contact surfaces in the room. Each week we will do a deeper cleaning of the classrooms using an electrostatic machine. This is a device that will allow the facility staff to go into the room and to use a spray. The spray is charged with ion particles that adhere to all the surfaces. So it's a quick application that can cover all the surfaces in the classroom that are high touch points. And that will be taking place at a minimum every Friday. We're actually looking at doing that with greater frequency. One of the questions that came in is, what is the protocol if a teacher or student tests positive for COVID? What about if a family member of the teacher or student does? All right, so the first thing is, we know that if anybody in our school presents with symptoms, not even testing positive, presents with symptoms, then we have our isolation room protocol. And so that's the room that's adjacent to the clinic. It was the counselor's room. We have taken down the door that was between those rooms and replaced it with a new door with a glass window so that Mrs. Snowden can monitor students both in the well clinic, the regular clinic, and the isolation room. Anybody who presents with symptoms will be isolated. Parents will be contacted, and we ask that they pick them up as soon as possible. When they pick them up, they will pick them up by way of the old breezeway entrance so that they're not passing through the school. In the case of actual diagnoses, positive diagnosis, Mrs. Snowden will consult immediately with our local health department and with the Office of Catholic Schools. The standard protocol is a positive case of COVID in the school may require a building-wide closure for 2 to 5 days. That's the standard. Now, that doesn't mean it will always happen because each situation is going to be specific. There'll be particular circumstances that the health department will need to review. It's possible that the health department would say close a wing of the building or close a classroom, but the standard that we've seen in the literature is 2 to 5 days closure for everyone. With that said, the guidance is continuing to change on a regular basis. Last Friday, Mrs. Snowden participated in a meeting with Virginia Council of Private Education and the Virginia Department of Health that addressed a change in exposure protocols. So up to this point, it's been our understanding that if someone in a family has been exposed to COVID or has COVID, that all members of that family would quarantine. And that guidance has been now revised, and Mrs. Snowden will be providing those updates to us. What it comes down to is the level of interaction that that family member has had with other family members. So she's going to continue to monitor that guidance and share that with our families as need be. A question came up, if the virus percentage goes up, is there a possibility of closing the school again? Yes, that's a distinct possibility. So that could be based upon our own decision-making. Again, Mrs. Snowden has a specific training on monitoring health data. I'll be meeting with her on a daily basis along with Mrs. Horgan to get updates. And if we have concerns about the health or wellness of our community, then we'll make the decision to close our building. The other way it could happen is if state or local officials determine that it's necessary, as they did back in the spring, then we would follow that order as well. Another parent wrote in a question, we have chosen to enroll our child in the 2-day-week cohort. If at any point in time we have an exposure in our family and we feel we need to keep our child home so as not to expose the classroom, how will this work out? It's an excellent question. So the first thing that I would encourage that parent to do is to contact Mrs. Snowden immediately so that we can be aware of the potential exposure within our school and consult with the professionals. Secondly, that child can then participate in the virtual learning program, have access to all the learning through that program. We've had a number of questions about masks and face coverings, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time addressing that as well. As you know from the letter that I put out a couple of weeks ago, wearing a mask is required for all adults in the building and for students in grades 4 through 8. We picked grade 4 because the state guidance is for children 10 years of age and older. Students in grades K through 3 are highly encouraged to wear them throughout the day and expected to do so when physical distancing is not feasible, during transitions, or when actively participating in the classroom. There will be intermittent mask breaks. So if a student is seated at their desk and they're taking a test, the entire class is taking a test, there's no interaction, that's a moment when that teacher might say, everyone can take their masks off for the next 30 minutes because you're working independently and there's no interaction taking place. That's going to obviously depend upon the 6-foot social distancing, which needs to be in place, and it's going to depend upon the discretion of that teacher at that particular moment. We have gotten some feedback in regards to the importance of students knowing how to properly wear their masks. A question came in as to whether or not students need to change their masks every 2 hours. A medical professional had suggested that that might be necessary. I've consulted with Mrs. Snowden on this. we have not seen any guidance from any of the organizations that we've been following in regards to the need to do that. But nevertheless, it is important that students know how to wear the masks and how to try to keep them clean. So in support of that, Mrs. Snowden and Mrs. Slater, our counselor, are going to be working on a video message to our school community with some important information about the opening of the school year that will include information about wearing of masks. Additionally, Mrs. Snowden is putting a letter together that's going to include a lot of this information for parents, and we'll be sending that to you within the next week. A question has come up about design restrictions. At this point, students can wear the mask of their choice. Goes without saying, it has to be appropriate. Just like on a dress down day, there are certain limitations with masks. There would be limitations as well. It has to be appropriate for a Catholic school, but we're not going to require students to wear uniform masks or branded masks. We recognize that this is a challenge for our community and for our students, and so this is an opportunity for them to, have a little fun with it. We do have a significant stock supply of masks. There is an organization that offered to donate masks to Catholic institutions. When we got word of that, Mrs. Horgan jumped on it right away. We got a shipment of 50,000 masks 2 weeks ago. So we're covered for masks for some time. So you can send your children in with a mask that you choose, but know that we have plenty of them to go around if anybody needs more. Also, one of our parents works at Fairfax Hospital and shared with me the strategy that they've been using, that when they take off their masks, they place them in a brown paper bag to keep them clean. And so she's donated those bags to our school. So what we're going to be doing is providing each of our students with a brown paper bag that they can tape to the side of their desk, so that when they take their mask off, they can drop it in that bag. It's not going to be on the floor. It's not going to be in their desk. It's just going to be in that bag so it stays nice and clean. Now, our approach on this is going to make all the difference. We have to remember that the students follow our lead. I mean, they do in everything. So if you're wearing masks as parents, when you go out, if you're wearing masks, you're modeling for them what we want them to do in our school. And so you want to really expose them to that practice. And this is going to be a change for us because it's all new for the children. I was thinking about this, and I recall when we first implemented lockdown drills. And this is a number of years ago. I had actually hesitated to have lockdown drills because I was worried it was going to upset the children. And then there was an incident that took place in our geographic region. And thankfully, nobody was hurt. It was a school security incident. Nobody was hurt, but that school was praised for their readiness and their preparation because they had actually had lockdown drills. And that day I made the decision, and I talked to the faculty and I said, we're doing this. We have to prepare our children. And so we came up with a thoughtful way to roll that out. And we told the children, and we still tell them, it's another way we practice keeping ourselves safe at All Saints. So we presented it in a very gentle way. And I said to the teachers at the time, I said, I know that I feel incredibly anxious about this, and I know you feel anxious about this too. It's a very difficult time. But I said, we will get to a point in the life and culture of our school where lockdown drills will become as familiar and as common as fire drills. And true enough, that's where we are now. And we face another shift in our culture right now as we're asked to wear masks, as we're asked to do these new things. So it's unfamiliar, and it's awkward, and it's uncomfortable. But in time, we will adapt to it, and our students will as well. So I do encourage you to have an adjustment period for your students, or your children. If they haven't started wearing masks, what you can do is ask them about that. I mean, some students are going to be fine with it. They're going to say, yeah, give me the mask, I'll put it on, and they're going to be fine. Others are going to need more time to adjust. So an idea is, if you feel like your child's going to need that time, to have them wear the mask maybe 15 minutes on a particular day, and the next day a half an hour, and just gradually increase it so that when they come to school, it's not the first time that they're putting a mask on for a period of time. And this can work. I saw it today. Today, for the first time since March 13th, we had students in the building for an activity. Today was kindergarten screening day. And I want to praise the kindergarten screening team, because we could have just canceled the screening, but they said, no, let's make this happen. We'll do it in August. And so they did it with social distancing, signage, the whole 9 yards. And the children and the parents came in with the masks. And I had an opportunity to go in and out of some of the classrooms. And I saw the children interacting with the teachers. And some of them had their masks on. The little girl, little kindergartner, she had a pink mask and a face shield with pink on it. And she was smiling and she was happy. And I said, you know what? I said, I love your mask. I love your shield. You look great. I said, your mom and dad did a great job with that. You need to tell them, and she just beamed, So there are ways that we can make our students feel more comfortable about this new practice. So it's about creating a culture. It's modeling best practice, encouraging compliance, and then offering individualized support. So a couple of parents have asked, what's going to happen if students refuse to wear masks? Are they going to be punished? Are they going to be in trouble? Well, no, because this is really about learning. So what it's going to come down to is Mrs. Snowden as our nurse and Mrs. Slater as our counselor. They're going to be the ones tasked with helping students through those challenging moments. And we know that students are going to have moments where there's going to be a student who wears a mask all the time and they're just having a difficult day. And they just, for whatever reason, they can't make it happen in that moment. We understand that, and we're going to do our best, but we're also going to be reasonable and meet the students where they're at developmentally. But again, we're going to leverage the expertise of our nurse and our school counselor. Of course, we will be making exceptions for students with allergies and special needs. If you have a child in that particular circumstance, do reach out to Mrs. Snowden so that she can speak further with you about that. There is the potential for use of a face shield in place of masks for those documented exceptions. Teachers will also have access to face shields so that when they're teaching and they're at 6 feet or greater away from their students, they can take off their masks if they're comfortable doing so and just wear the face shield so that the children can more easily see their facial expressions. One of the parents asked a question, why is All Saints not making it mandatory for all on school grounds to wear masks, including all students? That's a great question. That's a really good question. What we're doing is we're trying to align our policies with the guidance of the state. And in the state of Virginia, it's 10 years and up are asked to wear masks. And so also that sense that we want to be reasonable. We recognize that our youngest learners this year, our kindergartners, are 5 years old. And we know as adults wearing masks for a long period of time can be a challenge. For 5-year-old students, it's an even greater challenge. And so that question of, is it reasonable? Is it age appropriate? What's going to be the right balance for us? And that's what we're really striving for, to find that right balance. A follow-up question from a parent related to that. With a child in 1st grade, we're hoping that most, if not all, students in the classroom will be wearing masks. If after the start of the year, we learn that this is not feasible, can we switch to the online program? The answer is absolutely yes. Parents, as the primary educators of their children, have to make the decisions that they think are in their best interest. So if at any time you have a concern or a question about our practice or about your child's safety, you reach out to me, reach out to Mrs. Horgan, reach out to Mrs. Snowden, so that we can talk to you about that and see if we can improve procedures or if the other instructional model would be better for your family. Will the K-2 kids be required to wear masks when they enter the building and go to the bathroom? Yes, that will be a requirement. So that's the expectation. They're encouraged to wear them throughout the day, but they're expected to if they're transitioning. So if they leave their classroom, they're in the hallway or they're going to the bathroom, when they're coming into the building in the morning, when they're exiting in the afternoon, if they're in close interaction with other people, that's when they're expected to wear those masks. Okay, and the last question, not COVID related, but stewardship shares. Will they still be required for the year? And will parents be able to volunteer in the school? Full transparency, I haven't even thought about it. We've been working on a lot of other details. I haven't thought about stewardship shares. We're going to be reasonable in our approach. That. We certainly were in the spring. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to volunteer in the school very much. So part of the CDC guidelines is really limiting parent access and visitor access to the school. And so that's another reason why we're being pretty creative with what we're doing with our special subject teachers to give our teachers breaks. Because our first thought was, well, we could have a core group of parents to come in and provide relief, but it's not going to be best practice in terms of mitigating potential transmission. So limited volunteer opportunities in the building this year. Well, I believe I've just gone through all the questions that were submitted in advance of the event, and I know I went at a very quick pace. Again, we're going to send out a summary of all that information tomorrow, Friday at the latest, so you'll get that in print. And I know there's probably been a lot of questions coming in. So at this point, I'm going to turn things back over to Mrs. DeVore, who probably has some questions for me.
Let me start with the list that I've been keeping. Will the virtual class days also be 8 to 3?
Yes, they will. So it'll be just like the school day. So we wanted to have that same flow as a regular school day. Now, I should say this, it's not going to be exactly 3 o'clock. There are end of the day activities where we get ready to dismiss. Students are packing up. So around 2:40, 2:45, that's when the learning's going to end. So it won't be exactly till 3.
Thank you. I had a question about lockers, which I think you may have already covered, but just reiteration of that in terms of the middle school use of lockers.
Oh, sure. So the middle school students are not going to be using the lockers in the hallway. And the reason is the close proximity and the shared space. That would be very difficult to manage. Not to mention the concept of middle school students. You know, they miss each other, they want to be with each other. So trying to keep them separate in the hall would be a bit of a challenge. So they won't have access to lockers. It's possible that 4th and 5th grade students may store some things in lockers because they're going to be upstairs. But again, it's going to be very limited use.
Thank you, Mr. Conroy. Another question came in, considering all the challenges throughout the day and how uncomfortable the students will be possibly have we considered having the students wear PE uniforms for comfort of some sort to enhance learning?
Oh, we have. That's a good question. We've thought about it. It's certainly more comfortable for the students, and I know that they would really like it. But again, I think there's something to be said for our uniform. That idea of students looking the part of a student, it sets their mindset. For example, on dress down days, there is a significant difference in our building. And this happens in any school where there's uniforms. On dress down days, conduct changes, you know, there's just a whole different feel in the building. And so, not that the PE uniforms are like dress down days, but it's somewhere between dress down and our regular uniform. I'm also mindful of the fact too that parents have been preparing for the new year. Some have bought uniforms as well. And so we recognize that and are hesitant to make a last minute change.
Thank you. This question is in regards to virtual learners. Will the total number of students assigned to each classroom include the virtual learners? So if a virtual learner decides to return in person, will they have a space for them in class and still be able to maintain social distancing?
Yes, that is correct. So we are continuing to maintain our cap size for the grade levels. So by and large, we would have no more than 30 students per grade level. We may have to make, you know, one exception in a particular grade level for special circumstances, but across most of the grade levels, we're going to cap it at 30 so that there can be that fluctuation between virtual learners and in-person learners. And just to kind of give you a sense of the numbers, as of 2 weeks ago, we had 42 families that had chosen virtual learning, 100%. So it's a significant portion of our population.
Thank you. I had a question regarding the restroom breaks. Will the children, how many children will be in the restroom at the same time? How will that look in terms of social distancing?
Mm-hmm. Right, so the restroom breaks are going to be scheduled. The teacher will bring the class down, and that will be just part of their daily routine. Obviously, there'll be emergency restroom breaks if they need them as well. Had a meeting today, a conversation with Mrs. Snowden, another one with our Director of Facilities, Mr. Andre, and we're going to be closing every other stall in the bathrooms. So there'll be half usage, and then also the sinks, since they're in proximity, they're close, we'll be closing one of the sinks on the counters as well.
Thank you. Another somewhat a social distancing question, health related. How do faculty and staff take student temperatures while social distancing?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. And we will not be able to be 6 feet away with our current practice. It is an infrared thermometer, so you can hold it out. And Mrs. Snowden, feel free to, give more information on this. It'll be several feet away, but I don't believe it's going to be possible for 6 feet. Mrs. Snowden, you have anything you want to add to that? There we go.
Well, we will have mask coverings while doing them, but correct, that physical distancing will be, probably a length of the arm. And also one of the parents had asked about doing the temps outside, that it sometimes can affect because of the sunlight, those infrared thermometers. And that is true. I'm looking into a covering over it so that it blocks. And once it's shaded, it does work appropriately. And if necessary, if someone does have a temperature, we could always double check it if needed. They could pull out of the carpool line and I could myself double check it.
Thank you, Mrs. Snowden.
For adding that extra in there. And addressing another question that was in our list. So thank you very much. The next question, will teachers and staff be required to take tests prior to the start of school and then continually throughout the year? Will students have that requirement is the second part of that question.
Will they be required to take tests? Are the
COVID tests?
COVID tests? No, we do not have a plan for that at this point for faculty, staff, or students.
Thank you. A question came up about the face shield, which Mrs. Horgan answered, that you can wear a face shield and a mask. Then a question came up about a face shield without a mask.
So that would be considered an exception. Mrs. Snowden, you want to take that one?
I was just going to say, I am going to include that in my letter to the parents, but we would prefer mask because research shows that the face coverings, the mask, are better for decreasing transmission and protecting the wearer. However, a face shield is, in certain circumstances, if a pediatrician would prefer them to have a face shield rather than a mask, I just ask that anyone who would prefer that route, please email me and let me know.
Thank you, Mrs. Snowden. I'm going to have you stay close because the next question also relates to you.
Sure.
Children have temperatures for many reasons. Temperature checks are not accurate accounts of health. If you could just address the reasoning behind the temperature checks.
And I've had teachers ask me the same question. So a lot of the adults are thinking the same thing. So basically, anytime anyone in school has a fever temperature above 100, that is at the time that I will call the parent and ask them to pick the student up. So we will be following the same rules as far as that goes. If there is a reason, if a child is on, is being treated by a physician for something and the temp is a little higher, again, I would love a phone call or an email to let me know so that I can make the teacher aware and so we know it throughout the day. That maybe the child is at 99.5. We don't send home students unless they're 100 or over. And I would love you to let me know if anything's going on in advance.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Snowden. Another question for you. If someone goes into isolation, what happens to their class?
When someone go in school, do they mean, or at home?
Yes, like if during the school day someone develops a fever or something along those lines and you bring them to your isolation room.
What we will be doing is at that point, because I am not a physician, I can't diagnose exactly what is causing, say, a fever over 100 during the day that I receive a student. At that time, the student will stay in what I'm calling the sick room, the isolation room, until the parent picks them up. We're asking for a 2-hour window for pickup. And then I will ask them to contact their provider and discuss with them if the child should go in for a test, the symptoms, and if the fever continues, they're not allowed to return to school until they're fever-free for over 24 hours.
Thank you so much. Will there be, Dave, Mr. Conroy, this question is for you. Will there be a focus on increased ventilation in classrooms? Maybe just a further information about that?
Yes, there will be. So teachers will be encouraged to have their windows open to allow for just natural intake of air. We're also changing the settings on our HVAC systems to be on the fan operating all the time to maximize the air exchange in the space. We're also raising the filtering level on the systems as well. So we've taken a close look at our HVAC systems to try to maximize its potential.
I have a related question I'd like to follow up with. What does the cleaning procedure entail? Is it strictly surface cleaning, or will there be fogging or some other method used?
Well, I think the fogging method sounds like the electrostatic method.
Yeah, I believe so.
So that'll be taking place on Fridays, although we may be doing that more frequently. I talked to Mr. Andre today about the possibility of doing that actually every day. So we're looking into the feasibility of that. So it's going to be a combination of practices, but that will be our deepest cleaning approach.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this is a question regarding as far as teachers being able to have their children attend 4 days attending 4 days. I'm not sure how different that is from the rest of the families within the school. I support the teachers 100%, but again, to have a 4-day option of instruction where the rest of the family's paying tuition, just a question regarding the reasoning for that and why others can't have a 4-day instruction.
Oh, sure, and I understand. I mean, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is make it possible for our teachers to say yes to coming back and teaching. You know, we do have a couple of cases, at least a couple teachers that I know of, who without that level of support would be looking at a very difficult decision for the year ahead. So that's where that originates. And it's easier for me to say yes to that because they are so dedicated and, you know, really putting themselves out there. They have historically, you know, with what they've done for our school, but in this particular moment, I told them this morning, you're all called to greatness. You know, we're going to be operating in a whole new way this year. And so I want to honor their commitment and make that happen. But I certainly understand, you know, the perspective of a parent, but I think the faculty and staff are very deserving of this, and, you know, I'm happy to support them in that.
Related question about the capacity issues and the extra faculty that would be required to extend a 4-day learning situation beyond K through 2.
Sure. And this is something I've gotten a lot of questions on because I know a number of you are aware of what other schools in the diocese are doing. And, you know, there are a number of schools that do have all of their students in session 5 days a week. So the challenge for us is this. We made a decision early on out of the gate that we were going to adhere to the guidance of 6-foot social distancing. And that's the game changer right there. And we did that because of our local health data. I'm sure you're all aware that Manassas has been a hot spot for COVID in the last couple of months. And so we're mindful of that. Father Lee, myself, the task force, we didn't feel it was prudent to reduce the social distancing less than 6 feet for that reason. With that said, to accommodate all of our students in the building at 6 feet apart, we would have to identify a lot more instructional spaces. So to offer the 4 days for K1 and 2, we've identified 6 other classrooms. We've repurposed 6 rooms, but we've maxed out the actual school building. To add grades 4 through 8, we would need 12 additional instructional spaces, and then we would need 12 additional faculty or staff. So unfortunately, from a facility standpoint, as well as from a budgetary standpoint, it's well beyond our reach. It was our hope, but it's just not feasible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Conroy. I had a question. If a child is home sick, can they still do e-learning?
Yes, they can. You know, my traditional approach on sickness is if a child is not feeling well and they're sick enough to be at home, then it's good to just let them rest and get their strength and recover and make up that work when they come back, because they've got a few days to make that up. So I would never want a child to feel or a parent to feel compelled, you know, but you know, if it's something that passes in the morning, they're feeling better by 10 o'clock and they want to jump online and join the class, I'm sure the teacher would be thrilled to have them on board.
We did have some questions about the block scheduling, specific questions about that in terms of the middle school, and Mrs. Horgan jumped on and provided some information, and then indicated that we'll be providing more on that in the coming week. Mrs. Horgan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I just, good evening, everybody. I'm happy to see. No, I am hoping that my response in the chat answered that question. We are hoping, I do want to make clear that we are, in doing the schedule, keeping in mind the cohorts so that students who, do not have, for example, science class on Monday and Wednesday, that we really make sure that that 85 to 90 minute block of learning takes place on opposite cohort days, so that students who are having science on Monday then would have a virtual opportunity to attend science on Tuesday or Thursday, whereas vice versa, Tuesday, Thursday, and then they would attend virtual on Monday, or Wednesday. So I hope that that made it, clear, and we are still working very hard on the schedule, very diligently on the schedule, as well as the cohort placements and teacher assignments. So that information will be forthcoming, but we are still working on that. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Horgan. Somewhat a related question. I still don't understand. This was Mr. Conroy, after when you were talking about the virtual learning, the live learning, the synchronous learning. I still don't understand how the virtual for the hybrid learners can be live learning. Won't the students going in on Tuesday and Thursday be learning what was taught on Monday, Wednesday?
Oh, really good question. Actually, no. So what's going to happen is, again, if you picture Monday morning, the students come into the classroom, half the class is there, we'll say there's 10 there, and then there's students at home, the other half of the cohort is at home. The students at home are going to log in when the day starts, and they're going to observe everything that that teacher teaches that day and participate in all the activities that that teacher facilitates that day. And that is the only way that we can make this work. Because if we looked at the idea of our teachers teaching in person and then having a completely separate cohort where they're managing different tasks and assignments at a different time, it would be impossible for the teachers to do both of those roles at the same time. What we can do is broadcast all the teaching and the learning that's taking place and have the students participate in it remotely. I guess another way to look at it is if you picture being in a classroom and you just knock down one wall and the classroom extends into the students' homes and they're just participating via Zoom. That's another way of kind of imagining it.
Thank you, Mr. Conroy.
Sure.
Just have a few more questions left. The kindergarten hours, if you could just go over those again. The kindergarten hours for, I guess, starting with orientation and then that first week of school, there's a question, is it 8:30 to noon first week, 4 days for the first week? Just an overview of that.
Sure, happy to. So kindergarten orientation will be Thursday, August 20th at 7 o'clock, and that will be a virtual meeting for parents, and the teachers will be giving a presentation. And then kindergarten first day of school will be Monday, August 31st, just like everybody else, the blue cohort in K1 and 2, but they will have 4 half days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday will be a half day for them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Conroy. Will siblings be able to go to the Welcome Back event in the Meet the Teacher? So in other words, if a parent, and there also was a question, should one parent be going as opposed to two, just to keep the numbers down? But so for instance, would a parent take their kindergartner into the kindergarten classroom to meet the teacher and then be expected not to have the sibling with them at that time?
Okay, if it's an enrolled sibling, that would be okay. But if it's a younger child or an older child not enrolled in our school, we would discourage that because we want to try to minimize the number of people coming into the building. So the ideal would be a student comes in with one of their parents to their classroom. Now, we know that we have some families with multiple children enrolled, and we know that both parents may not be able to participate taking a child to the classroom. So let's take the case of a parent, with 3 children enrolled, and they are the parent that's going to be doing this. Then to keep those children with them at all times, to social distance and go to those 3 classrooms.
Still looking for clarification that there is an expectation that students at home will be logged into Zoom from 8 to 3 for 7 hours. I realize there will be times where they have breaks in our way and they aren't actively involved in Zoom, but do they need to be ready to engage with the classes necessary during that, that time period, 8 to 3, during the virtual days?
Correct. So I would say yes, that's going to be sort of our default setting. Now, a teacher might get into a particular rhythm where maybe she says, okay, we're doing writer's workshop, every day from 10:30 to 11:15. No one needs to be online at that time. And so there might just become this established schedule that students and parents know, okay, that's writing time. We don't have to be online. But that's going to be determined at the classroom level. But the default would be to be logged in from the start of the day until the end.
Question about the start time for the virtual. Because of parent drop-off, there could be a situation where parents are dropping off one child at the school, and with the virtual, if a child is home doing virtual, will it start right up, or will the parent have time to get back from the school?
Sure, great question. And we haven't actually thought about that starting moment of the day, but in that each day we have opening activities. Students come in, they do morning work, something to kind of wake up their brains and their minds a little bit. I would think we would do the same thing for our virtual learners. I wouldn't be surprised if the faculty meets and decides, okay, maybe 8:15 or 8:30 is the moment when everybody's on. We've got all the students in the building warmed up, all the students at home should be warmed up, and everybody ready to go. So we'll confirm an official start time.
Okay, and then are the full-time virtual learners to attend the orientation too in order to meet their teachers and get materials? So just when we will be doing that?
Sure, they are most welcome to do that. If they're not comfortable, we understand that as well. We will be setting up procedures to make items available. So for example, Mrs. Coyle with the library is going to be setting up curbside pickup and delivery of library books for virtual learners. So we'll be putting mechanisms in place to support those learners as well.
And will there be an opportunity, like at the end of the that orientation day, perhaps for anyone virtual to tune in and meet the teacher virtually all at one time?
We hadn't considered that. One of the ideas we've been thinking about is a pre-recorded message from the teachers to all the students. So I'll share with you that in the past, when you've come to orientation, that's when you found out your class assignments. We're not going to do that this year. We're going to give you that information in advance so that you can come in and go right to that classroom. You can also prepare your child and feel that much more comfortable about the assignment. So there could be some advanced messaging from the teacher already, sort of an informal meet and greet.
Thank you. I had a question about the thought process that went behind the K-2 4-day-a-week learning versus, say, a middle school 4 days, a group that needs more intense 4 to 8, fourth grade to 8. Why are they not getting the 4 days? It's the same amount of exposure in the school, but the older children need the education to move on to high school or college. Thought process and how this came about for K-2.
Sure. So part of it's from experience, what we experienced last spring, when we implemented what we'll call our emergency e-learning. A lot of the feedback I got from parents, particularly parents with students in the lower grades, was that it was really difficult, because they had to be with their child and giving so much oversight. And I was reminded of the fact that the younger the child, the more oversight and supervision that is needed, the less a child can work independently on a computer. So that informed the decision, but then also the research out there, the educational research that says that we need to prioritize learning, and we need to prioritize it with the youngest learners first, because they're the most dependent upon the human interaction piece to get that foundation. So that's not to say that K1 and 2 are more important than grades 3 and 8, because that's not the case. But they learn differently, and they're more dependent upon us to help us in that learning process.
Thank you, Mr. Conroy. Can you discuss Schoology and how this differs from Google Classroom that was used previously?
Sure. So we're piloting Schoology this year. We're one of 15 schools in the diocese. And what Schoology will do is it will take all of our learning and put it on one platform. And it's going to be a lot easier for parents because instead of having to log into different accounts, you can just log into Schoology once and you'll be able to access your children's work. Schoology also syncs with PowerSchool. So when your children complete assignments in Schoology and they submit them and the teachers grade them, they can just hit a button and it just populates their PowerSchool gradebook. Schoology also can sync with about 200 different learning applications, things that we already use in our school. Google Classroom is one of them. YouTube videos is another one. So it's a robust platform that allows us to put everything under one umbrella. We can also manage school communications through there. We can do video conferencing. There's a high degree of functionality. As with many changes, we're going to start slow and just build from there.
I had a question about extended day. Will there be extended day available for students who are in the school?
Correct. So we are offering extended day, but it will be only for students attending in-person instruction that particular day.
Thank you. Couple more questions. Let me go back to my other list here. For the virtual learners, how would we handle handouts? How does the school plan to handle handouts? Would there be workbooks or would everything be more or less online?
Mm-hmm. Again, good question. I think there's going to be a combination of traditional pencil paper tasks, but increasingly we're going to be trying to digitize our process. And Mrs. Morgan has particular experience and expertise on this, and she's talked to me about helping the teachers set up interactive worksheets, learning activities through Schoology and through Google Classroom. So increasingly we'll be doing more of that to try to be paperless to the extent that we can.
Okay, thank you. Will the student dryers in the restrooms be used? Hand dryers? Maybe Mrs. Snowden can talk about that one.
I'm smiling because that's a question I've not thought of yet. I don't know, Mrs. Snowden, if it's on your radar.
The dryer, that is what will be used.
Okay.
At NOWS, that's what we're doing. If somebody has some good information to let me know about it and considering something else, let me know. But as of now, we're using the hand dryers. We do have all touch-free hand sanitizer units being installed in every classroom and throughout the building. So they will be touch-free.
Thank you. Question about the student pickup process, exactly how that would look. I think you covered that a little bit, maybe just reviewing that.
Sure. So right now, the current idea is let's picture the front parking lot. Parents would park in the same rows as we have in the past. The current plan is we're not going to have a long train of cars where you pull up and your child gets in the car because we don't want to block traffic on surrounding streets. So we're going to stick with what's familiar. We're going to have people park in their typical parking areas, and then we'll have a designated area on the edge of the parking lot where cars will then, when it's time, will pull forward and the child will get into the vehicle there. So we're going to have to come up with a numbering process or a name process by which we have someone outside every day communicating into the building who's the first in line. Now, we used to do this many years ago. This was the carpool system. And this was before technology. So there were some big challenges with it. But I'm confident there are other schools that already do this. So we're going to look at their models and see what we can do to make sure we can communicate that information very efficiently to students and teachers.
How will teachers be able to manage both the children or students in the classroom and also manage what's going on in the Zoom classroom? It says many distractions going on at home.
Sure. So, you know, I'm pausing because I don't think that teachers are going to be able to manage what's going on in the home learning environment. What they can do is provide guidance, feedback, direction, engagement to that student learner. You know, so it's going to be important that the student is attentive and hopefully their learning environment is free of distractions. I mean, that's another thing that's important for parents to create a learning area for their child. You know, they have their uniform on and it's their workstation, if you will. So the teacher really can't manage those pieces. But what they can do is put practices in place that promote a high level of engagement. So for example, a common practice in our classrooms is in the lower grades, when a teacher has a question, she may pull a stick, so they have popsicle sticks with the name of a student on each stick. And pulling a random stick, what that says to the students is, I better be paying attention because my name might be pulled. It's not, raise your hand, because then, you have students who aren't participating equally. When you pull a stick, they've all got to be equally engaged. We can still do that for our online learners. So that everybody's going to have to be paying attention because they might be called on to contribute to the lesson. So the teachers will excel at coming up with those types of creative engagement.
Question, what is the plan for reevaluating this plan? What is the plan for reevaluating the plan? Manassas is month to month, Prince William County Schools is quarterly. What does All Saints reevaluation plan look like?
I would say we're going to be looking at it on a monthly basis. Not necessarily that we're looking to make a significant change within a month, but we're definitely going to have opportunities for refinements. Those of you that were in our school last year, you recall that when we rolled out the e-learning, we made refinements over the first couple of weeks and the next couple of weeks, and we kept, tweaking the system until we felt like we were in a better position. And that will be our practice going forward. So there will be sort of those small refinements. The question of the bigger adjustments, like are we going to change the instructional models? That's going to be dependent upon the circumstance. The health data is going to influence that more than anything else.
Thank you. How will the students in e-learning or virtual learning present their work? Will it all be done, online, or will there be any times when they would need to do that, more in like a paper format?
Mm-hmm. I believe the majority of it's going to be done online because of the nature of it. So there might be opportunities, but they're going to be few and far between because the nature of the virtual learning is it's going to be in the digital world. So similar to what we did in the spring when all that content was submitted by the students online, that's going to be the typical model for the virtual learning.
Thank you. There's a few more questions here. What more can parents do to help support the school and the teachers? Any specific things?
Well, that's a great question, and we certainly appreciate the support. Well, I mean, first and foremost, pray for our school community. It's a challenging time for everybody, and we're all trying to respond as best we can. We all know you love our school, and we know we've put together a plan that we think is well thought out, but it doesn't meet everybody's needs or their wishes. So I know it's a challenging time, but I think to pray for the success of our mission. When I started the task force, I named it the Continuity of Mission Task Force because I could see the stakes are high, in terms of what we're going to be facing. And so the idea is we want to preserve the mission of All Saints, preserve Catholic education in our parish. So you can pray for the success of our mission. That's the number one thing that you can do. I would love to have you come in and volunteer and help us out, but we've got restrictions on that. We're even to the point you really can't even send in baked goods to us, because things need to be pre-packaged. So prayers more than anything. That would be wonderful.
Thank you. Somewhat of a similar question in terms of parent access. Will limiting parent access also apply to parents dropping off forgotten homework, band instrument, and or lunch?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think historically, I think that's an area where we've been a little bit more lenient. We've accepted things. We always will make an exception. I mean, if somebody forgets something the first time, we're never going to make an issue of that, of course. But, we've been fairly lenient on that. I think this will be just a natural, authentic opportunity to really instill in the children the responsibility they have, and to discourage parents from dropping those items off.
Thank you. Let me see if we have any. I think I'm getting to the end of the list here. When can the students pick up their Chromebooks for the school year? How will that look?
Mrs. Horgan, you want to take the lead on this one?
The question was picking up Chromebooks. So we are working on a schedule for that. Mrs. Pettigen and I are meeting tomorrow and Friday to begin scanning in and relabeling all those Chromebooks to include our 3rd and 4th and 5th grade students. We are hoping to get a process in place prior to the start of school where our virtual learners can stop by and pick up a Chromebook along with all of their supplies, whether it be workbooks or things from the school. So we're hoping to get those together, and then our in-person learners will receive them within the first week of school, depending on their cohort day. So very, very soon into the year.
Thank you, Mrs. Horgan. We're getting towards the end of the list. If you have anything else, if you want to go ahead and send it in, if I haven't covered it already. I tried to get everything that was early, but just in case I missed it, I'm working towards the end of the list now. Will there be a commitment to continuity of learning should a teacher need to be quarantined? Has the school secured a list of subs? How will that be handled?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent question. And that is something that I'm working on. I've already confirmed which subs are available from last year's list and have begun the process of interviewing additional subs, both teacher subs as well as nurse subs as well. But I will say this, if you know of any contacts, if you know anybody in education or anybody who is interested in education, they don't have to have a teacher's license. They don't have to have teaching experience. You know, a 4-year degree is preferred. And if they have some educational experience teaching religious education, something of that nature, they would be an ideal candidate. So, you know, spread the word, because we're going to need a significant list. Not that I'm forecasting that we're going to have a great need, but we want to have a depth in our list so that we have people to go to.
Thank you, Mr. Conroy. Prior to COVID, there was a commitment to investigating adding special education within the school. Is that on hold now?
That commitment to investigating special education, I'm assuming that would be for developmentally disabled children, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think it was special needs, yeah.
Special needs, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is on hold for now. We do have at All Saints, we have a resource program with 2 resource teachers, and so we're able to meet the needs of students with mild to moderate special learning needs. We have not been able to go to that next level. We know that it's our bishop's vision that schools will be creative and come up with ways to make that happen. And increasingly, there are elementary schools as well as high schools in our diocese that have accomplished that goal. For now, you know, we have to put that on hold, you know, for the obvious reasons of COVID, but that's something that will get future attention for sure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Conroy. At this point, I seem to be at the end of the questions. I apologize. Oh wait, one more just came in. Will there be any restrictions on carpools for mixing of students and families?
That's a really good question. Can you read it one more time for me?
Sure, absolutely. Will there be any restrictions on carpools for mixing of students and families?
I don't believe so. I think we need to have awareness of cohort assignments. I think we have to have awareness of class assignments. But the reality is, you know, outside of school, you have other lives, you know, and you have people that you interact with, whether they're your neighbors or your community members, work associates. People assume different levels of risk in their personal life. And so obviously that's well outside the purview of the school, you know. So I think we would just encourage people to use their best judgment, to be cautious, but no, we're not anticipating a restriction on carpools.
Thank you. At this point, I believe we've gone through the questions. If anyone thinks of any additional questions, you can send me an email. It's jdevore@allsaintsva.org. My email was listed in the announcement about this meeting. I'd be happy to take those and put them all together. We also want to apologize because the meeting was capped at 100. It was under our understanding that our Zoom account allowed us to go up to 500, that we had that extension allowed. And so there were some that were not able to be in the meeting. I did try to let people, our Kathleen staff dropped off so more people could come in. But I will be sending out the recording tomorrow, and we'll definitely get that out to everyone, and we can continue to take questions and address those for you. We also have an FAQ on the website that will be kept up, and of course you'll be receiving correspondence through email regularly from Mr. Conroy and Mrs. Horgan.
Great. Well, with that, Mrs. DeVore, thank you for hosting tonight, facilitating the
My
Q&A
pleasure.
session for us. Well done. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We appreciate your interest in our school, your commitment to Catholic education, and know of our delight that you continue to partner with us. So on that note, why don't we just close with a brief prayer. Hail Mary, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, take care, everybody, and be well.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great night.